Alrighty, well, good afternoon and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Andrew Doffney. I'm the Instruction and Outreach Librarian at the New Jersey State Library, and it is my pleasure to present our speakers for today. We have Alex Conroy and Larry Metzler. Larry Metzler will be doing the bulk of the presentation. He is the president of Apogee Financial Services Group Incorporated, the law offices of Laurent W. Metzler, president of Innovative College Funding Solutions, LLC, and also the president of the Morristown, New Jersey Society for Financial Awareness. Larry's entire career has been focused exclusively on financial planning, college planning, estate planning, retirement planning, asset protection, and wealth preservation planning, personal and business tax planning, and real estate matters. So thank you very much, Alex and Larry, for being here today. Before we jump in, just a few housekeeping items to go over. We will be taking your questions at the end of the presentation today, so please feel free to submit them using the Q&A feature or the chat feature in the Zoom dashboard. There are a couple handouts that Larry has provided for today, and I will make sure that they get shared out in the chat. You'll be able just to click on download them from the chat. There will be a survey available at the end of the webinar, as well as in a follow-up email. If you have an opportunity, please complete the survey. We love hearing your feedback, and it really does help us as we move forward with our programming. And if you have any personal financial questions that you want to talk to Larry about, you can certainly contact him at his email address on the screen there. Or if you would like to schedule an appointment, you can certainly do that at the Calendly link, and I will send that out in the chat too as well so that you have it. For those of you who may be new to Zoom, this is a screenshot of what your Zoom dashboard should look like. If you're using a PC or a Mac, if you're using a mobile device, it might look a little different, but all the features will still be there. In your bottom left corner, you have your audio settings. That way you can make sure that you're hearing us properly throughout the entire presentation. If you have any problems, you can use this raise hand button here. I will send you a message and hopefully be able to resolve any issues that you may be having. In the chat button here, that will be where you're going to be able to see the handouts, as well as if you need to submit any questions, you can do that. Or if you want to submit questions using the Q&A feature, you can certainly do that as well. So that is everything that I have for you. So it is my pleasure to turn it over to Larry.
Looks like my screen is not shifting over here.
Just click the resume slideshow right there, Larry. Yep. From beginning and then resume slideshow should take care of it. And resume.
There we go. Okay. Now we got our technical difficulties squared away here. So welcome everyone. Topic for today, financial blunders that self-defeat us. This is an overview class or course, folks. What I'm going to suggest to you going forward in time, if you really want to get into this in some detail, but from a very easy to understand basis, any publications by a guy by the name of Dave Ramsey, I would suggest very strongly, go to the bookstore, look at some of his books that are available there. Big fan of him and his writings. So SOFA, Nationwide Nonprofit Educational Speakers Bureau, it's a 501c3. All that means it is in fact a nonprofit public benefit corporation. It's been around since 1993, and the mission basically is to end financial illiteracy across America, one community at a time. Andrew mentioned an evaluation form that you can download. Please do us the courtesy of filling that out and turning it in. Please be as candid and open as you feel comfortable doing. If you don't like something, please let us know. If you do like something, that's good as well. All right, so here we go. Planning basically starts off with no planning. And we always say, procrastination is what drives the day. And, inevitably what we see coming through the office is folks want to procrastinate and make excuses for themselves. And depending on where you are in your life cycle, so for example, you're just out of college, you're not probably spending a lot of money saving money, you're out having a good time. Then you get married and then you buy your first house, and a lot of your income and what have you goes into paying for that house. Next thing you know, you have a child or a couple or more than that. And now you're worrying about how are we going to do, pay for those expenses. Next thing you know, your child is in high school and, college planning looms large on the horizon. And as we go through these things, then eventually in our 50s or 60s or whatever the case may be, we start worrying about and focusing on our retirement. Well, the idea here is not to go down that route that most people do. Start off early by having a written financial plan. The key there, quite candidly, folks, it must be written. It takes a little bit of effort and time to actually build out your financial plan, but the beauty of it is, and the benefit of it is, it takes all of the seat of the pants decision-making out of the equation. The question, can we afford to buy this house? That answer that is in your financial plan. Can we move to a bigger house because we have 2 or 3 kids now? That is self-proving. We get away from this issue of transactional planning, flying by the seat of our pants. I can tell you, I am absolutely dedicated to planning. I feel it changes people's lives, truly changes people's lives. So please don't put this off. The sooner you start, the better off you're going to be. Never ignore the basics. Monthly budget to priorities, putting off inspecting hour, and we got to go through this one at a time. I want to change the format a little bit from the word standpoint, from budget to cash flow planning. I've learned over the years that the word budget has a very negative connotation. It's like a diet. Diets don't work because people are taking things we love to eat away from us. Budgets don't work because someone in the back of your mind, you're thinking, well, somebody's going to tell me I can't do something, I can't spend my money, as opposed to, again, words are important, change the idea of a budget to a cash flow analysis to find out where your money's going and how you spend it. Once you get control of your money, planning becomes a lot easier and a lot more productive and a lot more fun. So let's go through these one at a time. Protection, this is our insurance protections. On a prior workshop, we talked about this idea of a umbrella liability policy. What is that? That's a policy of $1 million that you put on top of your primary protections for your homeowners and your car insurance. Cost about $250 a year approximately. You acquire this through your property and casualty agent. Everybody on this call ought to have umbrella liability insurance. How about life insurance? I'll make a statement. I will suggest to you that no one on this call has enough life insurance. That's a pretty bold statement, but let me give you the overview here. You want to think in terms of capitalizing your income. So whatever you're making, if you take about 92% of that or 93% of that, that's going to account for withholding for Social Security, the FUTA, FICA, all that good stuff. It doesn't take into account taxes. So take your gross income, multiply it by 92 or 93%, and let's say that that's $50,000. So question, how much life insurance do I have to have at current risk-free rates of return to replace that $50,000 a year for the rest of my spouse's life reasonably and my children's lifetime? And then you can make some accommodations to that. But let's start with the first number. Right now, risk-free rate of return, I did the numbers before I came on today. A 30-year Treasury bond is yielding about 1.84%. A 5-year CD is yielding about 1.15%. So let's bump up the 30-year Treasury bond. Let's assume it's 2%. So if I divide $50,000 by 2%, that's $2.5 million. I divide it by 3%, it's $1,667,000. I divide it by 4%, it's $1,250,000. Divided by 5%, it's $1 million. Why is that important? Because very seldom, if ever, do I see clients, especially younger clients, who have enough insurance. They think that if they have $500,000 worth of insurance, that's a lot. And then you look at the mortgage on their house is $300,000. So now they're down to $2 million, trying to replace $50,000 of income on a $200,000 principal sum. You need to go back, use this capitalization method to get some sense of what your insurances should be We call that basically a needs planning analysis. We can tweak that, or you can tweak that by also plugging in expectations for college planning, expectations for moving to a larger house, so forth and so on. Once again, this all rolls back to the idea of having a plan that you can do this with. Retirement, time and assets, what's that about? Well, obviously, it focuses on this idea of what my expected lifestyle or my cash burn is going to be in retirement. Am I going to have enough money, either through pension, Social Security, and asset accumulation, to do that? Some of you may be familiar with the idea of Rule 72s. What that says is divide my rate of return into 72. That will tell me how often my asset base will double. Be very careful about using projected rates of return. The relationship between the bond market and the stock market has changed beginning around 1999. We call it the yield curve. If you were to go on yahoofinance.com and look up the 30-year Treasury bond yield and blow that out on a 20-year period, you will see that prior to 1999, Treasury bonds, 30-year Treasury bonds were yielding in excess of 6%. Right now, as I previously indicated, it's less than 2%. Why is that important when you're trying to plug in your long-term planning? It used to be, again, prior to 1999 or 2000, that there was an inverse relationship between the stock market and the bond market, meaning when the stock market was going down, the bond market was going up, and vice versa. So in a time of stock market decline, I could pull my money out of the stock market, invest it in a vehicle that after taxes and after inflation would give me a positive rate of return. Well, where are we today? Once again, 30-year Treasury bond, less than 2%. What's inflation right now? Well, historic inflation the last 15 years has been a roughly 2.25%. Where is it right now? Well, if you've got gas in your car recently, you know it's a lot more than 2%. Or if you bought any meat or produce at the supermarket, you know it's more than 2.25%. These issues are really important in your overall planning. Once again, get a written plan. Investing, how am I doing? How am I doing in the long term? If you're thinking about getting rich overnight, folks, Andrew and I were talking about this earlier. There's an old adage out there that says bears make money, bulls make money, pigs get slaughtered. When you're trying to outperform, geometrically or exponentially, the actual historical rates of return, you're probably going to get into trouble. Taxes, not to be rude, but got a clue. So are you doing tax planning or getting your tax returns prepared? Which is it? It should be the latter, doing tax planning, not just getting your taxes prepared. Estate planning addresses the issue, who gets what and when do they get it? You want to make sure that you understand what happens if you don't have a will. We'll get into that in just a minute. Do you have kids? Yeah, obviously they're minors. State of New Jersey, you die without a will, spouse gets half, kids get half. Surprise. Most spouses think they get it all. No, not in the state of New Jersey. So if you have minor children, get a will, appoint not just a primary guardian, but a successor guardian. If you're lucky enough to have one or two people who are willing to take your kids in the event something happened to you and your spouse, you're blessed. Hopefully you have at least one person. I shared this on a previous presentation on estate planning. I had a situation where a person I went to law school with told me a story that her brother had passed away in a car accident. He and his wife, they had 5 kids. They named her as the guardian of their children. And essentially, these 5 kids showed up at the doorstep. Well, not a good idea. Not owning a revocable living trust. Basically, a revocable living trust avoids probate. It also provides a long-term distribution plan so that you don't wind up giving your kids, all of your estate assets and life insurance proceeds at age 18, which would be the case, again, if you just operate under state law. Why don't we save enough? Because we don't pay ourselves first. The idea there, pay yourself 10% first and then worry about who comes next. Oftentimes, because of how we have structured our finances, we're paying the mortgage company, the credit card companies, and God knows who else before we pay ourselves. That's something you want to get out of if you're in it. Once again, planning can help you do that. Dave Ramsey, who I mentioned earlier, has a concept called snowballing your debt. That if anybody has any interest in that, we can go over that with you. Tax returns. Do you live to get your tax refunds? The idea is saying, hey, that's planned savings. Well, I mean, Uncle Sam loves it, doesn't pay you any interest on the money that you leave with him, or it, I should say. I mean, would you do better taking what Uncle Sam basically gives you back and helping pay off your credit cards, put that into a savings account or an investment account or whatever the case may be? And the answer obviously is yes. Mention here of an emergency fund. Rule of thumb, if you have one wage earner in the family, you want to have at least 6 months of your normal living expenses banked in a safe place. Money market account, whatever the case may be. If you have two people working, again, the rule of thumb used to be 3 months. I think in some instances, COVID has kind of changed those benchmarks, if you will, somewhat. I know for sure that some folks realized that 6 months was not near enough given their circumstances. Stock market up and down. Is it going to go down? The evidence of bear markets averaging about 39.5% on the down about every 7 years. It's about 13 been recorded so far. Some folks feel it's over, it won't happen to me. That's just nonsense. The trees don't continue to grow forever, nor does the stock market. One of the previous presentations, I mentioned a white paper that addresses this. Is called Sequence of Returns Risk, which essentially addresses the issue of 5 years before retirement or 5 years after retirement, I can ill afford to withstand or be exposed to a 2008 scenario or something analogous to that. So you want to make doggone sure that as you're getting closer and closer to retirement, you just don't have 100% exposure to the stock market. This is a true story. I had a fellow come in from Lockheed Martin that was referred to us, who retired February of 2009. And unlike most people, he literally had 10 years of his retirement planned out in detail. Certain trips, certain cruises, this, that, and the other thing. He lost about 53% of his money in 2008, and literally he was suicidal. I don't know what his expectation was that we could do for him. We couldn't get his money back. Referred him out to a psychiatrist, and things kind of went on their way, so to speak. But again, had he been properly planned, that would never have occurred, because he would have been 100% invested in the stock market that close to retirement. Big mistake. Inflation, once again, inflation now is running rampant. Increasing taxes. A lot of folks don't know this. The tax cuts that were put into place during the Trump administration will sundown in 2026 if we don't have a change prior to that. The Biden administration basically is saying that if there are tax changes, it won't affect anyone making less than $400,000 a year, or excuse me, more than $400,000 a year. One would hope that that is the case, and by having this new legislation, that will short circuit the 2026 sunset provisions, meaning that we will be in a situation where taxes will remain more or less where they are right now, and then extended into the near future. Ignoring a spending behavior that's become ingrained in us. This is a hard thing to address and a hard thing to break. We all feel oftentimes that we deserve better things, bigger things, newer things. And I'm not saying that that's not true, but the question becomes at what cost? So once again, think in terms of a written financial plan. Do I want that $60,000 car, or can I get away with a $35,000 car? Well, we all want a better car and a prettier car, for example. But how does that really fit into our overall planning? Does it make sense for us to do that? Someone much wiser than me once said that, the smell of the new leather wears off after about 6 or 9 months, but the payments continue for the next, 60. So however that resonates with anybody on the call, I don't know. This idea of stock market corrections, once again, impacting our investments or pensions at work. You want to pay particular attention to where you are in your life cycle and where your assets are positioned. Once again, kind of tying that in with the reduction in the yield curve. A lot of folks are saying, well, the bond funds are not returning much of anything, so I have to put more of my money or keep more of my money in the stock market. That may or may not be true depending on your circumstances. This idea of spending to purchase, insurance. What kind of insurance do I need? Do I really need more life insurance? Well, again, going back to our original concept there, that's pretty easy to calculate. The question then becomes, if I need insurance, what kind? Do I need it for a short duration? That would be term insurance. Do I want it for a longer period of time? Do I want to make sure that my children have a legacy no matter what happens to me? That may be a different form. Our investments, buying, this is a big thing, solar panels. These things are sold, folks, and they're sold basically on, you're going to get a tax credit. Tax credits are pretty substantial. The question is, pardon me, how long do I have to go before these tax credits basically are fully used up? Oftentimes people are in their 70s by the time, based on their current tax structure. Moreover, it's also sold on this idea of the energy companies will buy your excess production. Doesn't happen, not around here anyway. Do I need a pool in the backyard? I don't know. Do I need plastic surgery? We have one client that basically was allocated $10,000 about every 3 years for what she refers to as beauty. Okay, does it work in her plan? Dental care, a new car. In your planning, let's say you need a new car in 2022, and you're going to spend X number of dollars for that. How often in your planning do you want to replace that car? Do you keep a car for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, or do you roll it over every 3 or 5? Whatever that trend may be, does it make sense long term into your retirement planning and then your post-retirement planning? Anything to do with a contract, folks, for goodness sake, please make sure you read it entirely or hire someone to read it for you. It's all in the fine print. All the weasel language, as I call it, the lawyers put the weasel language in there. Make sure you're doing your due diligence as opposed to what it says at the bottom of the slide, ready, fire, aim mentality. Credit cards, bane to our existence. You can't make this stuff up. Every once in a while, we'll have someone come through who basically has 10, 20, 30, $40,000 on their credit cards, paying anywhere from 16 to 26% interest. Meanwhile, they're maximizing contributions to their 401k plan. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So if you think about it, when's the last time on a consistent basis you got 16, 20, 26% returns on a consistent basis on your retirement plan contributions? Oftentimes using credit card is not really a need, it's a want, it's more emotional spending. And the reality of it is you're purchasing it with money that you don't have, because obviously if you had the cash, you wouldn't have to use your credit cards. Also, think in terms of, once again, your emergency fund. Some folks use the credit cards in lieu of an emergency fund. A better option would be, if you have some equity built up in your home, and as opposed to using a credit card in the event you have an emergency situation that exceeds your emergency savings, open up a line of credit with the local bank. The credit rates will be obviously significantly less than what you would ever be paying on a credit card. So that's something to keep in the back of your mind. Savings is really nothing more than deferred spending. So we save money, hopefully you save money to buy that next car. You save money to make that improvement to your kitchen or whatever the case may be. So separate in your mind savings from investment. Investments are a more longer term situation. Savings is a more of a short term event. But what is our behavior? Do we take money out more than we put money in? Mirror test. What's this all about? You have to own your reality. A very, very wise person once said to me, you can know something, but owning that knowledge is something separate and apart from having the knowledge. We have to own our own habits. We have to own our own behavior. If we ever want to have either a really, really good chance of achieving our retirement goals in life, or even non-retirement goals in life, it's a choice you make every day. Funny example, I learned many, many years ago, I had an office in Haddonfield, New Jersey, and they were building a Starbucks right up the street from my office. And literally about 10 o'clock, 10:30 every day, I and the other guys in the office would go up there, and it would be, a cup of coffee, $1.78, put the change in the cup for the person who's serving you. And then around 2 o'clock, we would go back again. And then if I had night appointments, I go back again. Well, I was spending anywhere from $4 to $6 a day, times the number of days I worked, times the number of weeks in the year. And I realized pretty early on that was the cost of a ski trip for me when I used to ski. That recognition or realization came. I was going through BJ's one day and I looked at what a pack of Starbucks French roast beans would cost me, which is about $20, and how many cups of coffee I would get out of those beans. So long story short, I stopped going to Starbucks and we started brewing our coffee in our office. So in a very microcosm, that's the kind of things we want to be looking at. Three key people who can help us keep us on track. Basically, your accountant, your attorney, and your financial advisor. Something to think about. And very few people that we encounter ever really have thought about this. Think in terms of what is the purpose of your wealth accumulation specifically. Not I want to be the richest guy, in your town. Not I want to retire at age 60. Specifically, what is the purpose of your wealth accumulation? Is there 1, 2, 3, 10 things that you want to accomplish? Oftentimes people think the cost of planning is a cost as opposed to an investment. The time and the money you invest in creating a written financial plan will pay dividends on an exponential basis. Also give you the emotional security of knowing that when you make a decision, it's a global decision, not a transactional decision. Social Security. Again, I see people make these mistakes and they are permanent. Everybody knows, probably on the call, I can take my money at 62 if I want. And if I do my calculation and say, how many years is it going to take me before I break even by waiting to full retirement age? It takes me 12 years, 13 years, 14 years. Oh, therefore, I should take it early. Well, here's what happens, folks. When you take it early, there's an issue there. Are you going to continue to work? A lot of people don't know this. There's a 2-for-1 offset. If I take my Social Security at 62 and I'm still employed, for every $2 of earned income, I lose $1 of Social Security benefits. And here's the dirty little secret. The administration will not notify you of that until after typically 12 months, 18 months, or 24 months have expired. When you make a decision with regard to Social Security, typically you have 12 months to reverse that. So if I took it at 62, realized I made a mistake, I have 12 months to the day to reverse that, but I have to pay the money back that I got. But let's say you don't know that. You took it at 62, now you're getting penalized. What else have you done? Essentially, you've limited the amount of money your spouse will get in the event of your demise. So that's one issue we have to focus on when we talk about Social Security planning. There's another misunderstanding there, and it's how we perceive the information that we get. So let me give you a hypothetical here. Dad is the higher wage earner, but mom works. Dad's Social Security projected benefits $2,000 a month. Mom's is $1,000. Mom knows, as dad does, that if dad passes away, mom will get what? The higher benefit. So mom will get $2,000 a month compared to her previous $1,000 a month. Is that a good thing? If you think about it very superficially, well, I was getting 1, now I'm getting 2, but hasn't the family lost $12,000 of cash flow into the household? The answer is yes. What else haven't they thought about? Mom now is going to go from a joint filer to a single filer. So she's lost in that fact pattern $12,000 of income, and she's now in a high marginal tax bracket. You want to make sure you do alternate spousal Social Security death planning to make sure you've taken that into account. Planning for college. Oftentimes, folks, depending on your goals, your kids' goals, and how much you allow social pressure to guide you and force you into making bad decisions, the cost of college, oftentimes, to send one kid through college is more than you may have paid for your house. Yeah, 2, 3, 4 kids, it's incredible. It's almost obscene, quite frankly, the cost that people are paying for school. Again, we all want our kids to be educated and have a great life, but at what cost? How does your college planning integrate with your retirement planning? In many instances, you may be able to send your kids to college and retire or not. How do we pay for college? If we borrow, where? What's the cost going to be? A wedding, have you plugged that into your planning? Another car in a few years, and then how many years thereafter? Once again, your bucket list. What is it? What are your dreams? Do you have a bucket list? Does the bucket list accommodate both spouses? Are our portfolios allocated risk return wise, taking into account both spouses' feelings about this? Or does just one person drive the car? Things you have to think about. Failure to lower our risk profile the closer we get to retirement. Once again, that's that sequence of returns risk we mentioned earlier. I'll be more than happy to have Alex email anyone who wants a copy of that white paper, which addresses this. Not only does it address that issue, but it also looks about sustainable rates of distribution. It used to be, once again, when the yield curve was normalized, a 5% distribution rate when we monetize our investments was sustainable. Today, they're questioning 3%. So again, these are issues that you have to plug into your long-term planning. Unspoken assumption, my company and our government will take care of me, so I really have little to concern myself with. That's why I voted for fill in the word and work where I do, there's little risk. And we say facetiously, shh, the clue phone's ringing. Folks, the presidents don't, last time I checked, don't pass legislation. I love it. Every time I see, the promises, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. No, the president's not going to do anything. Legislature does everything by way of passing laws. If you don't like what's happening, call your congressman, call your senator. If they're non-responsive, vote them out of office. Enough said about that. All right, I am done on this presentation. Open the door up for questions, please.
All right, thank you, Larry. Yes, if anybody does have questions about your own personal finances or just general information, you can certainly submit them using the Q&A or the chat feature. Or if maybe there are some other blunders that you have observations on or questions about, let us know. Somebody asked, please review revocable trusts in relation to adult children in the family.
Adult children in the family. So we have an adult child still living at home with mom and dad. Is that what we're doing?
Yes.
Okay. So things you want to address after mom and dad pass away. Does that adult child, do you want that child to still live in the residence? Are there other children other than that one child? If the answer to that is yes, how are we going to balance the interests of the children who are not at home with the interests of the child who is? You can accomplish that type of planning, folks, with a will, as in addition to a revocable living trust. The problem with a will is it's subject to what they call collateral attack. So let's say, for example, that the person who's asking the question, there are other children not living in the home. And mom and dad in the will basically say that Johnny or Mary can stay in the house for the remainder of their life. And one of the other kids is not happy about that. They feel that's unfair. Can they collaterally attack that will and basically say, mom and dad spoke to me 2 days before they passed away and said that the house is going to be sold? the answer to that is yes. If the same language is in a revocable living trust, because trusts are governed more under contract law, and in a revocable living trust, the person who is setting the trust up, who is called a grantor, the person who is going to be managing the assets on behalf of the beneficiary is also the same person, the grantor, and the beneficiary is the same person. So think about it. I'm going to have a contract between myself and myself. Extremely difficult, if not impossible, to collaterally attack that. So with respect to that one question, I would say that the revocable living trust is much, much better served to address that issue.
All right. It's a single child who lives far away, is what they said.
Oh. But I thought they were living in the house.
No, they're not living in the house.
Okay, so then I'm missing the question here. What is the question?
The question was, can you speak to about a revocable living trust for an adult child in the house? But then they asked, what if the child lives far away?
Oh,
So this maybe if they're in college at this point, maybe.
okay. Well, I think the trust could do a number of things. I mean, we also always have what are called spendthrift provisions within a revocable living trust, meaning if my wife and I passed away and we have a substantial estate, do I want my child, in this instance, the one child, to get all the money at one time? Maybe I have concerns about that person's maturity, for example, and I'm afraid they might spend it, not properly. Am I concerned about that child's spouse getting involved? Divorces are running about 60% now in the younger generations. So am I concerned about that? That somehow the money I spent my whole life accumulating is now going to get in the hands of a divorcing spouse? So revocable living trust can address that. If the child has some form of credit issues, meaning they're spendthrifts now, or they have creditors, do I want to protect mom and dad's money eventually from being attacked by my child's creditors? So those are all a number of reasons why revocable living trust might make sense.
Do you have any strategies for getting out of the bad habits that we can so easily fall back into?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, and again, I'm beating the drum here. First and foremost, if you put a written plan together, you get all the data in, and that is a time, I don't want to say a substantial or disproportionate amount of time, but it takes focus to fill out a questionnaire. It takes focus to get all your numbers together, get all your data together. But once you do that, any financial decision that person or that couple have is easily measured, and I can't tell you how much a difference it makes when you see the long-term impact of a decision, as opposed to saying, oh, hey, look, we can afford this, or I deserve this. One way is you build in your savings an emotional component. You can literally set aside, a certain amount of money in a separate account that says, look, I had a really, really bad week. And you know what? We're going out to dinner to a really nice place Friday night. And we're going to spend a couple $100. Well, that's not in the budget. Well, if we've planned for that, because that's going to happen, or if you're a golfer, you want to buy that, and I don't know what it will cost, $1,000 putter or whatever, you can build those things in once you get to know what the client does that is not consistent with real prudent long-term planning. So, I mean, to answer your question, depending what these behaviors are, it's just making a decision to not act in a certain way anymore. And I'll give you another crazy adage. When I first heard this statement, I thought it was the most inane, stupid statement I've ever heard in my entire life. This person told me, and he was a Southerner, he said, if you keep on doing what you're doing, you'll always be doing what you're doing. It sounds moronic on its face, but it's really profound. So if you constantly overspend and you expect that to stop on its own, it's never going to happen. You have to take a positive step to intercede in your own behavior. And that, again, starts with having a plan.
What is the most common financial blunder that you covered today that you see when dealing with
I
customers?
would say, it comes in two directions. Having a lot of credit card debt, having a lot of debt. The quickest way, fastest way to financial success is get out of debt as quickly as possible. There's no such thing as good debt. Second thing basically is not understanding the relationships between the stock and bond market and relying on dated information from creating an expectational level of what my portfolio should be doing. Those are the two things we see probably more common than not.
How do I tell if my financial advisor has my best interests?
Great question. First and foremost, are they fiduciary? And the odds are they're not. A fiduciary, like for example, Apogee, our firm is a registered investment advisor. We are a fiduciary. And what that means is from a legal standpoint, we are legally bound and legally constrained to do what is in the client's best interest. The typical broker-dealer relationship is know your client. All that means is I know what your income is. I've done a risk-return profile on you, and that's about it. So the question becomes, does your advisor make money no matter what happens to you? Or is the relationship such that when you do better, they do better? If you ever see the Fisher Investments commercial on TV, that's the difference between a fiduciary and a typical broker-dealer relationship.
All righty. What are your thoughts about student loans, private and federal? Should I pay it down as quickly as possible or make minimum payments, and why?
Oh, wow. Okay. So I think you know what my answer is going to be. I mean, depending what the rate is, I mean, typically the rate's going to be 3, 4, 5%. Again, to the extent that you, not 345, 3 or 4, 3, 4 or 5%. Typically what you want to do is look at all of your debt. Look at the shortest, not the one that has the highest interest rate, the one that will be paid off in the shortest amount of time. So if I had a credit card and a student loan, obviously my credit card could be paid off faster than my student loan. This is what we call so-called snowballing your debt. So you pay off the shortest one first. And let's say I was paying $50 a month on a credit card, and if I pay that off, I'll pay it off in 12 months. So in the 13th month, I'm going to take that $50 that I had been paying on that first credit card and apply it to my second one. And let's say I have a second one, it's going to be now paid off. I'm paying 50 on that plus the 50 I had on my first one. I'm going to have that one paid off in 12 months. Well, now I have what? I have $100 of cash flow that I have been paying all this point in time. I need to capture that $100 and then apply that to the next debt that I have. Not spend it. Another analogous theme. I have a car. I have a car payment. My car payment is $300 a month. It'll be paid off in 12 months. 13th month, I want to make doggone sure I take that $300 and start paying off another debt that I have, or if I don't have any more debts, put that into an investment account. In this case, if you have a college loan, student loan, that's going to be a long-term loan. They're all 10-year loans initially. Pay it off as quickly as you possibly can. As quickly as you possibly can.
All right. Your your comment about no good debt has sparked some conversation. And somebody would like you to, I think this would be a good idea to maybe comment that somebody says, I think there is such a thing as good debt. For at least 10 years, I did not have one credit card. I had no debt except for my home mortgage. My credit score never went above 610. I got one credit card and my score soared to over 700. Once I use a credit card, my credit score jumped to 760.
Okay, so let me refine that. So to that point, so and I think it's admirable you didn't have any credit card debt. So you go and you get a credit card and you go out to dinner and you spend $100. And the bill comes in and you pay $95 on that bill. So you have $5 of debt, right? So you've established credit. So what you do is, and again, the result is absolutely correct. If it's a credit score issue, you don't accumulate large amount of debt. So if I'm paying 60% on $5 on my fact pattern, I don't really care about that, but I will have had credit. And I'll build my credit score up by doing that. What we don't want to see is thousands and thousands of dollars on reoccurring debt, again, at 16 to 26% interest rates. So thank you. That's a good point. It's a very, very good point to improve your credit score.
Another person asked, if a homeowner comes into a small inheritance, should they use it to pay off a mortgage if they hold no other debt?
That is very fact sensitive. On its face, I would say yes, but I mean, it's a more involved decision than just a yes or a no. In other words, what else is going on in this person's life? Do they have an emergency fund established? Right? Do they have other goals, short-term goals that are going to need cash in the future? Like, I'm going to need a new car in 2 years. You follow me? So if I have a 3% mortgage, but I'm going to have to finance a car as opposed to taking the money I just inherited and paying the car, pay the car off in cash. It's all about the cost of money, folks. The after-tax cost of money. So if I'm going to incur debt, I want to make sure that debt has the lowest after-tax cost.
Right. What about investing in real estate? Should it be done through an LLC? And would managing those properties be a full-time job, or is it something I can do on the side?
By all means, LLC, that's a legal liability issue. That's a no-brainer. If you're inexperienced and you don't know how to do, well, that's called minor repairs. There's an added factor in there, which is who's going to be doing the repairs for you when the landlord or the rental person calls up and says my sink washer is leaking. I got a drip in my faucet, things like that. Can it be part-time? Sure. In other words, if the math works out that your tenant is paying your carrying costs, your taxes, your mortgage payments, and they're paying the utilities. The wild card basically is what's maintenance, and is there enough free cash flow to pay someone to make these minor repairs so that you don't have to? Then yeah, you can certainly manage it on your own. Change the facts. I now have 5 properties, 10 properties, whatever the case may be. The more properties you have, the more time you're going to have to devote to it. Finding tenants, getting your leases in order, getting the proper insurance coverages, make sure your tenants are doing what they're supposed to do. So forth and so on. So big proponent of rental real estate if you're if you can handle being a landlord. It's a 24/7 job.
My father left lots of money when he passed. Is it better to use the money or reinvest it?
Oh, wow. Short answer, reinvest it. The question is, use it how and for what? Folks, these are great questions. And a question like that has what we call a soft fact component and a hard fact component. So the hard facts are obvious. Okay, how does this inheritance play into your overall short, intermediate, long-term financial goals? That's all great. However, what do I need? What do I want? What do I wish? That's an emotional decision. That's soft facts. And the best plan basically tries to integrate the soft facts, the emotional issues with the hard facts, such that every decision that a person or a couple wants to make is definable mathematically, it's definable impactfully going forward in time, and therefore makes that emotional decision somewhat more obvious. Follow me? I hope.
Yes, great information, they said, so thank you.
I'll give you an example in my own life. So I don't buy new cars. I buy secondhand high-end cars because some clients I deal with, if I don't drive the proper kind of car, they won't work with me. There's no way in this world I will ever pay for a brand new high-end car, because the minute I drive off the lot, I've lost 30%. That doesn't work for me. Some folks emotionally have to have, because they're being socially driven to this point, have to have the new everything. New phone comes out. I got an iPhone 12. The 13 Pro came out. Get rid of my 12. Why? Well, because I like new technology. Okay, there's a cost associated with that, right? Do you wear designer clothes or just regular clothes? And if you buy designer clothes, why are you buying them? Are you buying them because you like them, or because you think, people perceive you in a different light? Folks, I will tell you, those of you that have children coming up to college age, some of the worst decisions we see people make, they're making a decision on where their kid's going to go to college based on social peer pressure, not based on what's best for them or their kid or anything else. Purely social peer pressure. It's crazy.
Right, I don't see any more questions, so I'd like to go ahead and end it there, and thank you, Larry,
Okay.
for presenting today. You've given us a lot to think about. This session is being recorded, so please look out for the follow-up email that'll have a link to the recording, as well as the handouts if you were unable to get them. And I'd just like to thank everybody for attending today.
Thanks,
We
everyone.
appreciate your continued support, and we also appreciate Larry and Alex for continuing to come back and present for us. So I hope everybody found it insightful.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.